The stars looked cold and distant around the mining station orbiting Kepler-4, for to be. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vengeance, watching the planet below through the main viewing screen. His dark green skin reflected the blue glow from the control panels as his four eyes studied the tactical display. 12 Zephyrian heavy cruisers floated in perfect formation around the mining station. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Zephyrians had claimed this system 3 cycles ago, and no one had dared to challenge them since then. The mining station produced rare metals that powered their war machines across the galaxy. Admiral called Communications Officer Zekril from his station. His voice carried the clicking sounds that all Zephyrians made when they spoke. "We are receiving a transmission from the outer system." Vextar turned his massive head toward the communications station. His species stood nearly 8 feet tall, with thick, armor-like skin and powerful muscles built for war. "What kind of transmission?" "Unknown. Vessel approaching our position. They are broadcasting on all frequencies." The Zekril's claws clicked across his control panel as he worked. "The signal is coming from a single ship, Admiral." "One ship." Vextar's voice carried amusement. In his 200 years of military service, he had never seen such foolishness. What species dares to challenge the Zephyrian Empire with only one vessel? The answer came through the ship's communication system in a clear, steady voice. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty. You are occupying a human colony. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The bridge crew erupted in chittering laughter. The sound filled the air like angry insects. Vextar raised one massive hand, and silence fell immediately. He had heard of humans before, but only in intelligence reports. They were a young species, new to space travel, with only a few dozen colonies scattered across nearby star systems. "Humans," Vextar said slowly. "Show me this ship on the tactical display." The main screen changed to show a 3-dimensional map of the star system. Single dot moved steadily toward their position from the outer planets. The computer identified it as a mid-sized cruiser. Nothing special compared to the massive Zephyrian warships. "Admiral," reported Tactical Officer Grixmel, "the human vessel appears to be a standard military cruiser. Our sensors detect conventional plasma weapons and basic shielding. It poses no threat to our fleet." Vextar studied the approaching ship with interest. He had spent decades conquering worlds and defeating enemy fleets. Most species knew better than to challenge the Zephyrian Empire. When they did fight, they brought dozens of ships and thousands of warriors. This lone human vessel puzzled him. "Sir." Zekril spoke again. "We are intercepting communications from the mining station below. The humans have been sending distress signals for weeks." "Put it on speakers," Vextar ordered. The bridge filled with the sound of human voices speaking in their strange language. The translation system worked quickly to convert their words into Zephyrian. "This is Colony Administrator Lisa Grant to any human vessels in range. We are trapped on Mining Station Delta 7. The Zephyrians arrived 4 weeks ago and claimed our system by force. We have 347 civilians, including 52 children. Please respond." The message repeated several times before cutting off. Vextar nodded slowly. The humans had established this mining operation legally according to galactic law, but law meant nothing when facing superior firepower. The Zephyrian Empire expanded by taking what it wanted from weaker species, Admiral Grixmel reported. "The human ship will reach weapons range in 30 minutes. "Maintain position," Vextar ordered. "I want to study this vessel before we destroy it." He walked to the main viewing screen and stared out at the stars. Intelligence reports described humans as aggressive but primitive. Their technology lagged behind most spacefaring civilizations by several hundred years. They used crude chemical rockets to reach orbit and simple fusion drives for interstellar travel. Their weapons relied on outdated plasma technology and basic kinetic projectiles. Yet something about this situation bothered him. No species survived in space by making suicidal attacks against overwhelming odds. Even the most savage races understood basic mathematics. One ship could not defeat 12, no matter how brave the crew. "Zekril," he called, scanned the outer system for additional human vessels. They may be hiding behind planets or asteroids. The communications officer worked at his station for several minutes. Negative, Admiral. Long-range sensors detect no other ships within 50 light minutes of our position. The human vessel approaches alone. Possible, muttered Grixmal. No commander would attempt such an attack without support. Vexstar agreed, but the evidence was clear. Either the humans were completely insane, or they knew something his fleet did not. He decided to be cautious. Alert all ships to battle stations. He ordered, raise shields and charge weapons. If this is some kind of trap, we will be ready. The Eternal Vengeance hummed with activity as the crew prepared for combat. Throughout the fleet, Zephyrian warriors took their positions at weapon stations and damage control posts. Within minutes, 12 heavy cruisers floated in space like sleeping predators, ready to unleash destruction. On the mining station below, the human colonists watched their screens with growing hope and fear. Lisa Grant stood in the station's command center, surrounded by worried faces. She was a small woman by human standards, with brown hair and tired eyes. Leading the colony through 4 weeks of occupation had aged her beyond her 35 years. The ship on sensors reported station engineer Rick Barnes. It's definitely human military. Looks like a cruiser-class vessel. One ship against their entire fleet? Asked Security Chief Helen Clark. She was taller than Lisa, with the muscular build of someone trained for combat. That's suicide. Maybe they're buying time, Lisa suggested. Perhaps more ships are coming. But deep down she knew the truth. The nearest human naval base was weeks away. Even if reinforcements were coming, they would arrive too late to save the colony. This single ship represented their only hope. The human vessel continued its approach, broadcasting the same message every few minutes. Captain Morrison's voice never wavered, never showed fear or doubt. He demanded the Zephyrians withdraw from human space as if he commanded a fleet instead of a single cruiser. Admiral, Vexstar found himself impressed despite his amusement. The human captain showed courage, even if he lacked common sense. In Zephyrian culture, such bravery was respected, even when displayed by enemies. The human ship has entered weapons range, Grixmal reported. Open a communication channel, Vexstar ordered. I want to speak with this brave fool before I kill him. The main screen changed to show the interior of the human ship's bridge. Saw a much smaller space than his own command center, with fewer crew members but more advanced-looking control stations. The human captain stood in the center. Wearing a dark blue uniform with gold markings on the shoulders, Captain Jake Morrison appeared to be in his 40s. With short brown hair and calm green eyes, he showed no fear as he looked directly at the Zephyrian admiral. When he spoke, his voice carried the same steady confidence they had heard in his radio messages. Admiral, I'm Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty. You're in violation of the Galactic Settlement Accords by occupying this system. Withdraw your forces immediately. Vexstar leaned forward in his command chair. Captain Morrison, you face 12 heavy cruisers with a single ship. Surrender now, and I will allow you to evacuate your colonists before we destroy the station. That's not going to happen, Morrison replied without hesitation. This system belongs to humanity. We established this colony legally and registered our claim with the Galactic Council. You have no right to be here. I have the right of superior firepower, Vexter said. Your species is young and weak. Learn your place before I teach it to you. Morrison's expression never changed. Admiral, I'm giving you one final chance to withdraw. Leave now, and there won't be any trouble. The audacity of the statement made Vexstar's crew chittle with laughter again. Even the Admiral felt amusement at the human's boldness. Here was a captain who faced impossible odds with the confidence of someone holding all the advantages. Very well, Captain Morrison. I will give you a demonstration of Zephyrian power. Perhaps then, you will understand your situation. Vexstar cut the communication and turned to his tactical officer. Grixmal, order 3 cruisers to fire warning shots around the human vessel. Let them see what our weapons can do. 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers moved into firing position. Their plasma cannons charged with deadly energy, creating a blue glow. Around each weapon port, KX Mel's command, they fired simultaneously. Brilliant streams of superheated plasma streaked past the human ship, close enough to light up its hull, but far enough away to avoid damage. The display of power was impressive, each shot carrying enough energy to vaporize a city. The human ship held its position without flinching. Vexstar stared at the tactical display in surprise. Any reasonable captain would have turned and fled. After such a demonstration, instead the Liberty continued its steady approach toward the Zephyrian fleet. Captain Jake Morrison stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UES Liberty as his ship moved closer to the Zephyrian fleet. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. No one spoke loudly or moved quickly. They had trained for this moment for months. Chief Engineer Pete Jackson sat at his station monitoring the ship's power systems. His weathered hands moved across the control panel with practiced ease. Pete had served on human warships for 20 years. But this mission was unlike anything he had seen before. The modifications they had made to the Liberty were still experimental, and no one knew if they would work in real combat. Captain reported Weapons Officer Amy Sullivan from her station. All systems are running at full power. Weapons are charged and ready. Amy was younger than Pete, barely 30 years old, but she understood the Liberty's weapon systems better than anyone else in the fleet. She had helped design some of the modifications herself during their months of preparation. Her calm voice hid the excitement she felt about finally testing their new technology. Morrison nodded, without taking his eyes off the main screen. The Zephyrian fleet filled the display, 12 massive warships arranged in a defensive formation. Around the mining station, each alien cruiser was twice the size of the Liberty, with enough firepower to destroy a small city. Navigation Officer Carl Davis, Morrison called. "How long until we reach optimal firing range?" Davis checked his instruments carefully. He was a thin man with graying hair and steady nerves. Like everyone else on the bridge, he had volunteered for this dangerous mission. 15 minutes, Captain." The aliens are holding their formation exactly as predicted. Morrison smiled slightly. The Zephyrians were following standard galactic naval doctrine, the same tactics that had made them successful across dozens of conquered worlds. But human. Military analysts had studied every available battle recording from the past century. They knew how the aliens would react to different situations. Medical Officer Karen West, Morrison said into his communication device. "Are you ready for casualties?" Dr. West's voice came back immediately from the medical bay. "Sick bay is prepared, Captain. All medical staff are at their stations." Karen West was the oldest member of the crew at 55, a veteran military. Doctor Who had served in conflicts across human space. She knew this battle would test her skills and her supplies. 43 humans stood against hundreds of aliens. The odds were not in their favor. The Liberty continued its steady approach toward the enemy fleet. To Zephyrian sensors, it appeared to be a standard human military cruiser. The aliens could detect conventional plasma weapons, basic shielding systems, and a normal fusion power plant. Nothing suggested the ship was anything special, but the Zephyrians could not see past. The Liberty's carefully designed exterior, hidden beneath layers of armor plating and false bulkheads, were weapon systems that represented the cutting edge of human military technology. The ship had been rebuilt from the inside out, turning it into something entirely new. Morrison activated his personal communication device to speak with the entire crew. "All hands, this is the captain. In 10 minutes, we will engage a superior enemy force to protect human colonists. I know every one of you volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. Today, we show the galaxy what humans can do when defending our own people." Throughout the ship, crew members straightened at their stations. In the engine room, technician Sam Rodriguez checked the power systems one final time. In the weapons, bay gunner Tony Garcia made sure the loading mechanisms were functioning perfectly. Every person aboard the Liberty had trained for months to reach this moment. On the mining station below, Colony Administrator Lisa Grant watched the tactical display with growing tension. The single human ship looked impossibly small compared to the Zephyrian fleet surrounding them. Lisa said, Station Engineer Rick Barnes, "The human ship is still approaching. They haven't changed course or slowed down." Lisa nodded without speaking. She stood in the station's command center with the other senior colonists, watching what might be their rescue or their doom. Security Chief Helen Clark stood beside her, both women knowing that everything depended on the next few minutes. Maybe. They have a plan we can't see, suggested colony medic Dr. Frank Thompson. He was trying to sound hopeful, but his voice showed his doubts. 1 ship against 12, Helen said quietly. We'll need more than a plan. We'll need a miracle. The colonists had been trapped on the mining station for 4 weeks since the Zephyrians arrived. The aliens had not harmed them, but they also would not allow anyone to leave. Food supplies were running low, and several people needed medical attention that the station's facilities could not provide. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vengeance, watching the human ship approach with growing curiosity. His tactical officers reported no change in the vessel's configuration or energy output. It still appeared to be exactly what their sensors indicated, a single, moderately armed cruiser. Admiral reported communications officer Zekrel, "We are detecting no other human vessels within sensor range. Long-range communications show no distress calls or fleet movements from human space." This information puzzled Vextar even more. Military doctrine across all known species emphasized the importance of overwhelming force. No competent commander would send a single ship against an entire fleet unless they had no choice. But the humans had not responded to the Zephyrian occupation for weeks. They could have sent reinforcements if they wanted to. Grixmal Vextar called to his tactical officer, "What is your assessment of the human vessel?" The tactical officer studied his displays before responding. "Admiral, their ship shows no unusual energy signatures. Weapons appear to be standard plasma cannons and basic kinetic projectiles. Shielding is typical for their technology level. I detect no hidden systems or unusual modifications." Vextar found this even more confusing. If the humans had some secret weapon or advanced technology, their sensors should detect energy buildups or unusual materials. Instead, the Liberty appeared to be exactly what it seemed, an ordinary warship facing impossible odds. "Perhaps," suggested Grixmal, "the human captain hopes to negotiate after we demonstrate our superior firepower." "Possible," Vextar agreed. But something felt wrong about the situation. In 2 centuries of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts when facing unknown enemies. The Liberty reached the edge of the Zephyrian fleet's defensive perimeter. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to the alien flagship. "Admiral Vextar, this is your final warning. Withdraw from this system immediately, or we will consider you hostile and respond accordingly." Vextar activated his own communication system. "Captain Morrison, you are either very brave or very foolish. I will give you one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your colonists will be allowed to evacuate before we destroy the mining station." "That's not going to happen," Morrison replied with the same calm confidence he had shown throughout their conversation. "We're here to protect our people, and we're not leaving without them." Vextar felt a moment of respect for the human captain. Facing certain death, Morrison refused to abandon his mission or his people. Such courage was rare in the galaxy, even among the fierce Zephyrian warrior caste. "Very well, Captain. You've chosen your fate." Vextar cut the communication and turned to his crew. "All ships prepare for combat. Target the human vessel with minimum force. I want to disable them, not destroy them. Such brave fools deserve to live, even if they must spend their remaining years in Zephyrian prison camps." Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, weapon systems powered up and targeting computers locked onto the Liberty. 12 heavy cruisers prepared to unleash coordinated fire that would overwhelm any defense the lone human ship could mount. Captain Morrison watched the enemy fleet's movements on his tactical display. Everything was proceeding exactly as human intelligence had predicted. The Zephyrians were positioning themselves according to standard doctrine, creating the perfect setup for what would happen next. "Amy," he said to his weapons officer, "initiate Combat Protocol 7. Amy Sullivan's hands moved across her control panel, entering the sequence that would activate the Liberty's hidden systems. Combat Protocol 7 initiated. Captain All. Systems show green. Round the ship, carefully concealed panels began to slide open. Armor plating retracted to reveal weapon ports that had been invisible to enemy sensors. The Liberty's true nature started to emerge as months of secret modifications came online. Pete Morrison called to his chief engineer. "How are the power levels?" Pete Jackson monitored the readings as exotic energy flowed through systems that officially did not exist. "All systems operating within acceptable parameters, Captain. We're ready for full combat operations." The Liberty's external appearance began to change as hidden systems activated. What had seemed like a standard human cruiser revealed itself to be something entirely different. Weapon ports emerged from concealed bays, sensor arrays extended from hidden compartments, and additional armor slid into place. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in shock as the human ship transformed before his eyes. Energy readings spiked beyond anything his sensors had detected. The first shot from the Liberty changed everything. Amy Sullivan pressed the firing control. The ship's main railgun system activated with a sound like thunder. The weapon fired a tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole at nearly 20% the speed of light. The projectile crossed the distance to the nearest Zephyrian cruiser in less than 2 seconds. The kinetic round punched through the alien ship's shields as if they were made of paper. The energy released when the tungsten rod hit the cruiser's hull was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The Zephyrian vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light and expanding debris. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in complete shock. One of his heavy cruisers had simply vanished from the screen. The explosion was so sudden and complete that his sensors could barely track what had happened. He shouted to his tactical officer. Grixamel worked frantically at his station, trying to understand what his instruments were telling him. "Admiral, the Crimson Blade has been destroyed. The human weapon appears to be some kind of kinetic projectile moving at extreme velocity." Before Vextar could respond, the Liberty fired again. Another tungsten rod streaked across space and struck a second Zephyrian cruiser. This time, the aliens watched in horror as the projectile tore completely through their ship from bow to stern. The vessel broke apart in a shower of metal and plasma. "Impossible," whispered Grixmel. "No kinetic weapon should be able to penetrate our shields." But the evidence was clear on every screen. 2 Zephyrian heavy cruisers were gone, destroyed by a type of weapon that their intelligence services had never encountered. The human ship continued its steady approach, its strange new weapons charging for another shot. Captain Morrison watched the results of their first attack with grim satisfaction. The Liberty's experimental railgun system was working exactly as designed. Human engineers had spent years developing weapons that could overcome the energy shields used by most galactic civilizations. "Excellent shooting, Amy," he said to his weapons officer. "Target the next group of enemy vessels." Amy Sullivan was already working on her next firing solution. The Liberty carried 12 tungsten rods in its main magazine, each one capable of destroying a ship much larger than itself. She had trained for months to use these weapons effectively. Captain reported Navigation Officer Carl Davis. "The enemy fleet is breaking formation. They're trying to spread out to avoid our fire." Morrison nodded. The Zephyrians were reacting exactly as human tactical analysts had predicted. When faced with weapons they did not understand, most alien species would attempt to minimize their losses by spreading their ships across a wider area. Pete," Morrison called to his chief engineer. "How are our power levels holding up?" Jackson checked his instruments carefully. The railgun system required enormous amounts of energy to accelerate each projectile to such incredible speeds. "We're operating at 90% of maximum capacity, Captain. The fusion reactors are handling the load better than expected." The Liberty's power systems had been completely rebuilt to support its new weapons. Hume engineers had developed fusion reactors that were smaller and more efficient than anything else in known space. The technology gave their ships advantages that other species could not match. Admiral Vextar ordered his remaining 10 cruisers to return fire. Streams of plasma bolts and quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Liberty from multiple directions. The coordinated attack represented enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ship's defensive systems activated in response. Point defense. Lasers shot down incoming torpedoes with surgical precision. Clouds of metallic chaff scattered plasma bolts harmlessly into space. The Liberty's shields absorbed the remaining energy without apparent strain. Their defenses are holding, reported Grixmel with growing alarm. Our weapons are having minimal effect. Vexstar could not believe what he was seeing. The lone human vessel was not only destroying his ships with unknown weapons, but it was also shrugging off the combined firepower of his entire fleet. Nothing in Zephyrian military experience had prepared them for this kind of enemy. The Liberty fired its third shot. This time, Amy Sullivan targeted a cruiser that was trying to maneuver behind a piece of debris from one of the destroyed ships. The tungsten rod punched through the wreckage and struck the Zephyrian vessel with devastating force. The alien ship did not explode like the first two. Instead, it simply came apart as the kinetic energy tore through its internal structure. Pieces of hull plating and machinery scattered in all directions, creating a growing cloud of debris. 3 down, Amy reported calmly. 9 enemy vessels remaining. Captain Morrison activated the ship's communication system to address his crew. All hands, this is the captain. We have successfully engaged the enemy and destroyed 3 of their ships. Continue to perform your duties with the same professionalism you have shown so far. Throughout the Liberty, the crew responded to the battle with quiet efficiency. In the engine room, technician Sam Rodriguez monitored the power distribution systems that fed energy to the ship's weapons. In the medical bay, Dr. Karen West prepared for casualties that had not yet materialized. The human ship had been designed for this kind of combat. Every system worked together to create a vessel that could fight opponents much larger than itself. The Zephyrians were learning too late that size and numbers were not always enough to guarantee victory. On the mining station below, the colonists watched the battle through their sensor displays with growing amazement. The single human warship was not only surviving against the alien fleet, but it was actually winning. "Look at that," breathed station engineer Rick Barnes. "They're destroying the alien ships one by one." Colony Administrator Lisa Grant felt hope rising in her chest for the first time in weeks. The impossible was happening above their heads. One human crew was defeating an entire alien invasion force. "How are they doing it?" asked Security Chief Helen Clark. "Those alien ships are huge compared to our vessel." Dr. Frank Thompson studied the sensor readings with professional interest. "It appears our ship has weapons the aliens have never seen before. Look at the energy patterns. Those aren't plasma bolts or missile explosions." The Liberty fired again, and a 4th Zephyrian cruiser died in a flash of released energy. The alien fleet was now reduced to 8 ships, debris fields marking the locations where their companions had been destroyed. Admiral Vexstar felt something he had not experienced in decades of military service. Genuine fear. Was being systematically destroyed by a single enemy vessel using weapons that seemed to ignore every defensive measure known to galactic civilization. "All ships," he ordered through the fleet communication system, "concentrate fire on the human vessel. Use everything you have." The remaining Zephyrian cruisers moved into a tighter formation and unleashed their full firepower. The space around the Liberty lit up with plasma bolts, quantum torpedoes, and particle beams. The aliens threw everything they had at the human ship in a desperate attempt to overwhelm its defenses. The Liberty's point defense systems worked overtime to intercept the incoming fire. Laser turrets tracked and destroyed missiles while defensive fields deflected energy weapons. The human ship's shields flared with absorbed energy, but they held against the massive bombardment. "Shields holding at 87%, reported Amy Sullivan. "All defensive systems operating normally." Morrison watched the enemy attack with calm professionalism. The Zephyrians were making their situation worse by clustering their ships together. The tighter formation would make them easier targets for the Liberty's weapons. "Amy, prepare for rapid-fire sequence. Target the 3 ships in the center of their formation." Amy's hands moved across her control panel, setting up the firing pattern that would maximize damage to the enemy fleet. The Liberty's railgun system could fire once every 30 seconds. But proper targeting would allow each shot to achieve maximum effect. The first shot struck the lead Zephyrian cruiser and punched straight through its center section. The ship's hull cracked along its entire length before breaking apart in a shower of debris. The second shot hit another cruiser and sent it spinning out of control with massive damage to its engine section. The third shot missed its primary target, but struck a piece of debris from the first destroyed ship. The impact sent fragments flying in all directions like a shotgun blast. Several pieces of metal struck nearby Zephyrian vessels, causing additional damage to their hulls and weapon systems. 6 enemy ships remaining, Amy reported. All targets showing damage from debris impacts. Admiral Vexstar realized that his fleet was doomed. The human vessel had destroyed or disabled half his ships in less than 10 minutes of combat. His remaining cruisers were damaged and demoralized, facing an enemy that seemed immune to their weapons. "Sir," reported Zekril, with obvious fear in his voice. "Several ships are requesting permission to withdraw from the battle, for the first time in his military career." Vexstar considered retreat. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on never backing down from a fight. But continuing this battle would only result in the complete destruction of his fleet. The Liberty fired. Again, and another Zephyrian cruiser exploded in a ball of superheated gas and metal fragments. The space around Kepler-4 to be had become a graveyard of twisted metal and floating debris. 7 Zephyrian heavy cruisers drifted as lifeless hulks or expanding clouds of wreckage. Remaining 5 alien ships struggled to maintain formation. While facing an enemy that seemed unstoppable, Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vengeance, watching his fleet die before his eyes. In 2 centuries of military service, he had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated countless enemy fleets. Never had he faced weapons like those carried by the human ship. Admiral reported Tactical Officer Grixmel, his voice shaking with fear. "The Void Striker is requesting immediate medical assistance. They have taken heavy damage from debris impacts and have lost main power." Vexstar looked at the tactical display. The Void Striker was one of his oldest ships, commanded by his former student Captain Rokamel. The vessel was drifting helplessly, with its engines dead and life support failing. "Send the Thunderblade to assist," Vexstar ordered. "Have them take the Void Striker in tow and withdraw to safe distance." As he spoke, the Liberty fired another shot. The tungsten rod streaked across space and struck the heavy cruiser, Storm's Edge. The kinetic projectile punched through the ship's engine section, causing a massive explosion that tore the vessel apart from the inside. For ships remaining, Grixmel whispered Captain Morrison watched the enemy fleet's desperate attempts to regroup. The Zephyrians were trying to use their damaged ships as shields, while their remaining vessels maneuvered for better firing positions. It was a smart, tactical move, but it would not save them. "Amy," he said to his weapons officer, "begin targeting their command ship. It's time to end this." Amy Sullivan studied her targeting display carefully. The Eternal Vengeance was the largest ship in the enemy fleet, heavily armored and bristling with weapons. But it was also moving in a predictable pattern as it tried to coordinate the remaining Zephyrian forces. "Target locked, Captain," she reported, "ready to fire on your command." Morrison paused for a moment. Destroying the enemy flagship would likely kill Admiral Vexstar and his entire crew. The captain felt no pleasure in taking lives, even alien lives, but the Zephyrians had chosen this fight when they invaded human space. "Fire," he ordered. The Liberty's railgun discharged with its characteristic thunder. The tungsten rod crossed the distance to the Eternal Vengeance in seconds. But instead of striking the ship's center mass, the projectile hit the flagship's forward weapon array. The impact destroyed the Zephyrian ship's main guns and caused massive damage to its forward sections. The Eternal Vengeance shuddered under the blow and began to list to one side as internal explosions rocked the vessel. Admiral Vexstar was thrown against his command chair as the ship took the hit. Emergency lights flashed throughout the bridge and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. He could hear the sound of his crew calling out damage reports from their stations. Engineering reports main power is down, called out communications. "Officer Zekro, we have lost primary weapons and forward shields." The Admiral pulled himself upright and assessed the situation. His flagship was crippled but still intact. The human captain could have destroyed the ship completely, but had chosen to disable it instead. The message was clear: surrender or face total destruction. Grixmal reported. The Thunderblade and Starcrusher are requesting orders. They want to know if we should continue the attack. Vexstar looked at the tactical display. 3 of his ships remained capable of fighting, but they faced an enemy that had already proven superior in every way. Continuing the battle would only result in more death and destruction. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vexstar made a decision that went against everything he had been taught. Signal all ships to cease fire and withdraw to minimum safe distance. The order shocked his bridge crew into silence. Zephyrian military doctrine had never included retreat from battle. Their species had built an empire by fighting to the death rather than showing weakness to their enemies. Admiral Grixmel said carefully, "Are you ordering a withdrawal?" "Am ordering the preservation of what remains of this fleet," Vexstar replied firmly. "We have learned something important today about human capabilities. That information must reach the Empire." The surviving Zephyrian ships began to pull back from the Liberty, their weapons powering down as they moved to safer positions. Battle that had seemed like certain victory for the aliens was ending in complete defeat. "Captain?" Morrison watched the enemy withdraw with satisfaction. The Zephyrians were learning the lesson he had come to teach. Humanity would defend its people and its territory against any threat, regardless of the odds. "Communications Officer Dana Miller," he called. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship." Dana worked at her station to establish the connection. She was a young woman with short blonde hair and steady hands, chosen for this mission because of her skill with alien communication protocols. "Channel open, Captain," she reported. Morrison looked at the main screen as Admiral Vexstar's image appeared. The alien commander looked older than before, his dark green skin showing scratches from the battle damage to his ship. Admiral Morrison said, "You've made a wise decision. You prepared to discuss terms for your withdrawal from this system?" Vexstar studied the human captain for a long moment. "Captain Morrison, I must ask, what manner of weapons does your ship carry?" "They are unlike anything in our military databases." "Kinetic railguns," Morrison answered honestly. "We accelerate dense projectiles to extremely high velocities. The concept is simple, but the engineering required to make it work effectively is quite complex." The Zephyrian admiral nodded slowly. "Your species has developed weapons specifically designed to counter energy shields and conventional defenses." "We study our potential enemies carefully," Morrison replied. Human military doctrine emphasizes preparation and technological innovation. "We prefer to win battles before they begin." On the mining station below, the colonists watched the conversation through their communication systems. Colony Administrator Lisa Grant felt tears of relief running down her face as she realized they were finally safe. "They did it," whispered Security Chief Helen Clark. "One ship against an entire fleet, and they actually won." Station Engineer Rick Barnes was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. "Look at those weapon signatures. I've never seen anything like them. How did they accelerate those projectiles to such incredible speeds?" Dr. Frank Thompson shook his head in amazement. "Whatever technology they're using, it just changed the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. Every military force will want to know how human railguns work." Back on the Liberty, Chief Engineer Pete Jackson was monitoring the ship's systems. After the intense battle, the experimental weapons had performed better than anyone had hoped. But they had also pushed the ship's power systems to their limits. "Captain," he reported, "all systems are operating normally. The railgun capacitors are recharging, and we still have 8 projectiles remaining." Morrison nodded. The Liberty carried enough ammunition to continue fighting if necessary, but he hoped the demonstration of human capabilities would be sufficient to end the conflict. "Admiral Vexstar," he said, turning his attention to the communication with the alien commander, "I'm prepared to allow your fleet to withdraw from this system without further attack. In return, you will release all human colonists and acknowledge this system as sovereign human territory." Vexstar considered the offer carefully. His fleet was beaten, his ships were damaged, and continuing to fight would only result in more casualties. The human captain was offering him a way to save face while ending a battle he could not win. "I accept your terms," he said finally. My forces will withdraw from this system immediately. The mining station and all human personnel will be released, unharmed. Morrison felt a moment of respect for the alien admiral. Vexstar was accepting defeat with dignity. It's putting the lives of his remaining crew above his own pride or military reputation. Thank you, Admiral. Your decision will save lives on both sides. The Liberty maintained its position as the Zephyrian fleet began its withdrawal. The alien ships moved slowly, some of them barely functional after the devastating battle. Thunderblade took the crippled Void Striker in tow, while other vessels provided escort. Admiral Vexstar stood on his damaged bridge, watching the human ship grow smaller on his screens. The Liberty had taught him and his entire fleet a lesson about the dangers of underestimating unknown enemies. Zekril, he called to his communications officer, prepare a detailed report for High Command. Include full sensor readings of the human weapons and tactical analysis of their combat performance. Yes, Admiral, Zekril replied. Should I include your recommendation regarding future encounters with human forces? Vexstar thought about the question for a moment. Tell them that humanity has developed military technology that makes them a serious threat to any Zephyrian fleet. Recommend against aggressive action toward human territories without significant force advantages. The last Zephyrian ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the Kepler-442b system under human control once again. The mining station was safe. The colonists were free, and the galaxy had learned that humanity would defend its people against any odds. The silence in space around Kepler-442 to be felt strange after hours of explosions and weapons fire. Floating debris from 7 destroyed Zephyrian warships caught the light from the system's star, creating a glittering field of twisted metal that would orbit the planet for years to come. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the last enemy ship disappear into hyperspace. The battle was over, and humanity had won a victory that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. But Morrison felt no celebration, only quiet satisfaction that his mission was complete. All stations report secure from battle stations, announced Communications Officer Dana Miller. All systems operating normally. Morrison nodded and activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands. This is the captain. The enemy fleet has withdrawn from the system. Our colonists are safe, and we have successfully defended human territory. Every member of this crew performed with exceptional skill and courage. Should all be proud of what we accomplished today. Throughout the Liberty, crew members began to relax for the first time in hours. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Pete Jackson finally allowed himself to smile as he watched the ship's power systems return to normal operating levels. The experimental technology had worked perfectly, exceeding every performance expectation. Morrison called, "Establish communication with the mining station. Let's talk to our people." The main screen changed to show the interior of the mining station's command center. Colony Administrator Lisa Grant appeared on the display, tears of relief streaming down her face. Behind her, Morrison could see other colonists cheering and embracing each other. "Captain Morrison," Lisa said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Thank you. We thought we were going to die here. How did you do it? How did one ship defeat an entire alien fleet?" Morrison smiled at the woman's amazement. "Human engineering and a lot of careful planning, Administrator Grant. We've been preparing for this kind of situation for years. Are all your people safe? Everyone is accounted for?" reported Security Chief Helen Clark, stepping into view beside Lisa. "We have a few minor injuries from when the aliens first invaded, but Dr. Thompson has been taking care of everyone." "Excellent," Morrison replied. "We'll be sending a shuttle down to the station within the hour. We want to make sure you have everything you need and assess any damage the Zephyrians may have caused." Station engineer Rick Barnes moved into the camera's view, his face full of curiosity about the battle they had just witnessed. "Captain, those weapons your ship used, we've never seen anything like them. The energy readings were incredible. It's classified." "Technology," Morrison answered with a slight smile. "But I can tell you that human military research has been very busy over the past few years. We wanted to make sure we could defend our colonies against any threat." The Liberty moved closer to the mining station, its massive bulk casting shadows. Across the facilities, solar collectors. The human warship looked different now that its hidden weapon systems were visible. Panels that had appeared to be simple hull plating had retracted to reveal the railgun ports and defensive systems that had won the battle. Dr. Frank Thompson appeared on the communication screen, his medical training making him naturally curious. About the crew's condition after such an intense fight, Captain, do you have any casualties that need medical attention? Our facilities are limited, but we'll help however we can. No casualties, Morrison reported. Our defensive systems protected us from enemy fire. Dr. West has everyone checked, out and ready for duty. On the Liberty's bridge, Weapons Officer Amy Sullivan was conducting post-battle analysis of their weapon performance. The railgun system had fired 8 rounds during the engagement, destroying 7 enemy ships and disabling the 8th. The accuracy and destructive power had exceeded all test results. Captain, she reported, weapon systems performed flawlessly. We still have 4 projectiles remaining, and all launch rails are ready for immediate use if needed. Morrison was pleased but not surprised. The Liberty's crew had trained for months with the new technology, and every system had been tested extensively before their departure from Earth. Human military engineers did not believe in sending untested equipment into combat. Navigation Officer Carl Davis was monitoring long-range sensors for any sign of returning enemy forces. All sensor sweeps show clear space, Captain. No Zephyrian ships within detection range. Good, Morrison replied. Keep scanning. Admiral Vexstar might be tempted to call for reinforcements. The captain was not overly concerned about immediate retaliation. The nearest Zephyrian naval base was several days away, and any reinforcement fleet would take time to organize and deploy. But human military doctrine emphasized constant vigilance, especially after demonstrating new capabilities. 2 potential enemies. 3 hours later, a shuttle from the Liberty landed at the mining station's docking bay. The pilot was Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a young officer who had volunteered for the dangerous mission of approaching a potentially damaged facility. With her were Medical Officer Dr. Karen West and Engineer Sam Rodriguez. Lisa Grant met them at the airlock, still amazed that they were finally free from alien occupation. Welcome to Mining Station Delta 7. It's not much to look at, but it's home to 347 very grateful people. Dr. West immediately began examining. The colonists, who had been injured during the initial Zephyrian invasion, most had minor wounds that had healed well under Dr. Thompson's care. But she wanted to make sure everyone was healthy and ready for the journey home, if evacuation became necessary. Sam Rodriguez worked with Rick Barnes to assess the station's mechanical systems. Now, the Zephyrians had not damaged the facility, but weeks of reduced maintenance had allowed several minor problems to develop. The 2 engineers worked together to restore full operational capability. The aliens didn't harm the station, Rick explained as they examined the main power plant. They wanted to keep it functional for their own use. That's probably the only reason we're all still alive. Lieutenant Kim coordinated with Helen Clark to establish new security procedures. The colonists had lived under alien occupation for weeks and needed time to adjust to being free again. Some of the children were afraid that the Zephyrians might return. Back on the Liberty, Captain Morrison was composing his mission report for Earth Command. The Battle of Kepler 4-4b would have significant implications for human military strategy and diplomatic relations throughout the galaxy. Dana, he called to his communications officer, prepare a priority transmission to Fleet Headquarters. Include full tactical recordings of the engagement and our assessment of Zephyrian military capabilities. Report would take hours too. Transmit across the vast distances between star systems. But Earth needed to know immediately that their new weapons technology had proven successful in combat. Other human colonies might face similar threats in the coming months. Chief Engineer Pete Jackson was already thinking about improvements to the Liberty systems. The battle had revealed several areas where performance could be enhanced, and he wanted to implement upgrades as soon as possible. Captain, he reported, I recommend we conduct a full system analysis while we're here. The railgun capacitors performed better than expected, but I want to optimize the charging cycles for even faster firing rates. Morrison approved the suggestion. Human technology advanced through constant improvement and refinement. Each battle taught them lessons that could be applied to future conflicts. 6 days later, the Liberty prepared to depart the Kepler-4 for to be system. The mining station was fully operational again. An Earth command had dispatched a patrol squadron to provide ongoing protection for the colony. The immediate crisis was over, but its effects would be felt for years to come. Admiral Vexstar had already filed his report with Zephyrian High Command. The intelligence information about human weapons technology was spreading through alien military circles throughout the galaxy. Other species were beginning to reassess their assumptions about humanity's military capabilities on Earth. News of the victory was causing celebration in the streets. For the first time since humans had begun expanding into space, they had defeated a major alien power in direct combat. The victory proved that humanity could defend itself against any threat. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge as the Liberty entered hyperspace for the journey home. The mission had been successful beyond their wildest hopes. 1 ship and 43 crew members had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. But more importantly, they had sent a message that would echo throughout known space. Humanity was no longer a weak species to be pushed around by established galactic powers. They had the technology, the determination, the courage to defend their people against any enemy the galaxy would remember. The day when a single human warship approached an alien fleet at maximum speed, ignored their demands to surrender, and proceeded to destroy them with weapons that seemed to come from science fiction. The legend of the Liberty would inspire human crews for generations to come. And somewhere in the depths of space, other alien commanders were learning a lesson about dealing with humanity. When humans said hold position, they meant it. When they warned about consequences, they delivered them.